So, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest on the show. She's an entrepreneur, she's a software architect, and also the founder of WLCM, a full-service app development agency. So WLCM is pronounced welcome. They've done over 100 apps for different businesses worldwide, and their impact is just amazing. So join me today on the show as I welcome Lindsey Witmer Collins.
Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Lindsey. So I'm usually... the first 10 episodes have been just my voice. So this is something new. So Lindsey, today we'll be talking about mobile apps and business. So considering that you've done over 100 mobile apps, I believe you'll be the best person to talk to our listeners about this. So Lindsey, in your experience, are mobile apps still relevant for businesses today from your experience with them?
It just depends on what your business is, the nature of your business primarily, and then, whether or not to build one kind of depends on that. Like, what are you doing? Either if your business is an app, like you're trying to build the next Pinterest or the next Twitter or something like that, obviously you need to build an app. If you have a different kind of business, like if you're an author or if you're a venture-backed startup in some other area, or if you're a Fortune 500 company, like you'll be working with a different budget and you'll have different parameters. And then also like the stage of your business really matters in terms of determining whether or not to build an app. So, and then I think any app or any business that exists uses technology. So you're using technology right now. There's no reason for you to build your own technology to do your business, right? You can use this third-party app that you're using to record this call, right? So that's not necessary for you. There might be a situation where you need to use technology, but you need it to work in a particular way for your business. So then I think the first thing you would want to look at, regardless of what your budget is or what stage you're at, is like if you can achieve that using some existing third-party tool. Let's say you want to teach a course, then you could look for some third-party apps that allow you to basically just build your course within their platform. Or, you have a series of audio recordings or meditations or something. There are probably some third-party apps that you could use for that. Or let's say you have a community or paid community. There's some third-party apps you could use for that. So I would look to see if this solution has already been built. And if you can leverage that for your business, that's going to be the most cost-effective and fast way to go to market with whatever your technology product is. What could also be true is, or what you want to think about kind of when you're looking at these third-party solutions. So, and any of those examples, this would be true, is kind of look at, number one, does that third party provide all the functionality that you need? And if it doesn't provide all the functionality that you want, can you get away with it? Can you work within those parameters? And then number two, look at the usability of the product. Is it easy to use? You may not be an expert UX designer. And so what you are is an expert user. And so go and use the product as a user and see how you like the way it feels. And then you want to think about, can you brand this? Can it look like it's yours? And is that important? And then you kind of want to look at the security. What are they doing with your users or your customers' information, which is going to obviously have implications for your brand. So if they are using your customer email addresses and selling them to third parties or something like that, that's a question that you might want to ask. And I'm sure there's another longer checklist, but those are the things that come to mind. But also you want to think about implications for growth. So there's an example of a startup that I talked to recently that used a third-party platform to build out their course and audio content. And now they have determined that they really do have an audience. They've validated this thing with the market, and they're kind of determining whether or not they need to build their own product at this point. And one of the kind of main things that they are thinking about is their CRM and whether or not those emails are going to the place where they need it to go in order for them to run their newsletter platform or whatever, and just kind of if they can personalize that experience to be able to really properly grow their business. There are new features that they want to add and ways that they want to deliver that are a little bit different from what that third-party tool provides. And then if you're moving from a third-party tool to your own tool, there's going to be a migration that has to happen there, and how to navigate that smoothly. There are some implications to that. So, I mean, ideally, they would have maybe built their own product from scratch from the beginning. Then they wouldn't have to kind of jump through those hurdles. But I think it's helpful at the early stages. You want to achieve market validation first. So that's kind of like how I would look at building your own product. I mean, building your own product is expensive. It's time consuming. It's also really fun. It's very creative. It's exciting to watch your idea come to life, but it can be expensive because you don't want to outsource to a team. Like, you just don't. You can spend lots of money and just end up with a pile of crap, to be honest. It happens often. So, work with a reputable agency if you do decide to build something on your own. I feel like probably one of the main or the biggest hurdles to building your own software is like not feeling necessarily that you're a tech person or you've never done it before. And it feels, because it's such a giant product, like it feels pretty scary. Like, how do you find the right partner? How do you know that they're going to actually deliver quality code, which you can't actually see because it's under the hood, right? So there's a lot of, and understanding who should be on your team. Like, it can feel very intimidating to do this on your own. So I wrote a guide called How to Get Software Built, and that's free, and you can download it on my site. And if you have any questions about it too, you can reach out to me, because it can be daunting, but I don't want people to be intimidated, because I think that, especially non-tech people really should be building technology. So it's not just like a singular sort of archetype of person that's making this technology that's changing our lives. I would like to see more voices and diversity of ideas, happening in tech. So I want everyone to feel comfortable diving in when it's the right time and feel equipped, like you won't be taken advantage of. So.
Yeah, that's very good. So basically, you say a typical business shouldn't reinvent the wheel. Before they try to build their own app, they should check third-party solutions, check if those solutions can do what they want. Also, if they check the UX, the usability, check the brandability, check the security, data protection and all that, and also if it would allow them grow. And that's really good, really, really good advice, because like you said, it's expensive. It's really expensive. So for apps you've built, what sort of businesses have you built them for?
Sure. So I'll give you a few examples. Let's say I'll give you 4 examples that I think kind of run the gamut. So I'm going to start with a small and medium-sized bootstrapped businesses, because that might be who your audience is. So one example would be Caitlin Katie, who's based in Australia. She is a meditation, breathwork, yoga teacher, and she wrote a book called Heavily Meditated. That's just beautiful, and she has a great following and a great presence. People love her work. So she has this book that kind of talks about how to meditate, how to do breathwork exercises. And what everybody knows, I don't think I have to explain this, but like, it's actually really hard to go and like open up the book at the time that you want to meditate and then follow the instructions and close your eyes. Like, okay, what do I do next? You actually really want to have like a guided experience. That's really helpful. And Caitlin could just publish her meditations online somewhere, but it really made sense for her to package it within her brand and build like a beautiful experience that is very unique to her. Like, she has some special things that she recommends you do, setting your intentions. She has a tracker and different like ways of rewarding people. She has this special inspirational content. And so she built this little tool where you kind of like shake the phone and you get like a random message from her. So there's a lot of things that she wants to kind of build this like beautiful branded package and experience that's just all contained and has her touch all the way through it. And that essentially bridges the gap between reading about meditation and actually doing meditation and establishing the habits, which is what she wants her people to be able to do easily. So that has been a really great vehicle for her. She's also put her videos there, and it's just kind of like when you go to our app, like this is where Caitlin is, and everything is just beautiful. Another example would be Flow Living. So this would be like maybe medium-sized bootstrap business who had, Elisa Vitti, she wrote a book about cycle syncing. So Peter, you don't have a cycle, but like women do. And then so Elisa kind of like taught about here's like the 4 phases of your cycle. And when you're in this phase, you should focus on doing these kinds of projects at work. You should focus on this kind of exercise. You should be eating these kinds of foods. And if you do all these things, you'll have a better cycle and you'll be in sync with your body and all these things. So that was really groundbreaking at the time. I think she was the only one talking about it. It was a hugely popular book. She has a gigantic following. And there was similar with Caitlin, there's this disconnect between reading, and having this book on your shelf versus actually getting that information at the right time. The right information at the right time is kind of really what technology helps to do. Well, I think mobile apps have a particularly good opportunity for providing that to people. So she built an app that has a calendar in there. So you track your cycle and it tells you, okay, you're in this phase and as a result, do these things. And so it really makes that knowledge doable in people's lives. So that's also like helping to make a book real for people. And then 2 others are startups that are venture-backed. So Brella, for example, this is a childcare startup in LA. They are hugely successful. They needed custom software from the beginning. And then so they came to me asking for something to help with childcare scheduling, essentially running their whole operation, back end and front end. And I was skeptical about them needing custom software. And so I actually did research into some like third-party tools that they could use to get started, that they wouldn't have to make this huge investment. They had a tight timeline and they were trying to open their center. So I interviewed all these, that's a space where there's like tons of third-party providers who want to create done-for-you software for childcare centers. It's just like a giant crowded space. I thought something in here has got to work, but nothing actually did, because the way that Brella works is it's by the hour childcare. Walk-in childcare. There's no like monthly fees, or it just doesn't work like any other way, any other childcare center in that way in terms of how people can schedule. You could schedule care for your child for 2 hours this afternoon if you wanted and just drop them by. And they also have this special pricing model. And so something we've worked out on the back end, pricing and availability, how to basically play with those levers to like maximize the amount of seats that are used within the center at any given time, making sure parents are happy, like almost like thinking about it the way that airplane company might think about how to get all the seats on the airplane filled. They're going to have dynamic pricing on the front end. They're going to show a different availability than maybe is real. Like there's like a lot going on behind the scenes to try to maximize essentially profitability. But in childcare, there's also regulations. Like there's, Umbrella has its own, we need this many teachers per child. There are parents who they want to make it really affordable and really fair pricing. And so the pricing model is very unique. Every hour costs less than the hour before. So as you book more hours, it costs less per hour. Like there's this whole, and we've iterated on that system over time. It's fairly complex behind the scenes, but for the user, it's very simple. And so there's just a lot to that product that really needs to be very unique to Brella. And what they are doing with their branding and their spaces, they have these like out of this world. You've never seen a childcare center this gorgeous. Like it's just drop dead beautiful spaces. So their environment, their visuals are all unique. So they wanted every touch point of their experience to be Brella. The secure pickup process, we developed a special way to geolocate parents, to verify that the parent is the parent. We have these like secret passwords, and so that just really made sense for them. They've opened 4 centers in 4 years, so they're really growing fast. Those are 3 examples. I think Hey Mama would be a 4th example, because they started off with only third-party solutions and then realized they couldn't scale with that. They couldn't create a good enough experience or unified experience. So then we worked with them to do that.
That's really good. And by the way, I actually started yoga this year. I do yoga on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So I understand the yoga app. It really makes a lot of sense, and it will actually be really useful. Then the one for flow, the umbrella, yes. And so basically most of these apps needed that custom process or custom UI or something like that before you suggested that they should get their own custom app. So you talked about a guide to building your own software on your site. So just take us through that. Can you just take us through the process of creating a mobile app? I know you talked about you doing research for third-party solutions, first of all. So just take us through from that point to the final product, what a person will expect.
Yeah, sure. So the first thing you want to do is basic discovery in terms of market research and kind of look at, where you would be suited within the App Store and kind of what are people doing already that you like and what can you innovate on or what are you excited to do differently. With our agency, I would just have a couple conversations with you to essentially try to put myself in your shoes to the extent possible, really see the business from your eyes so that I can help to think about this strategically and make recommendations that I think are going to be really helpful for you as a business and essentially kind of install myself as a member of your team. And then at that point, we will start designing. So first phase is I usually do a flow chart. That's that's how my brain works. And I like to do that. Sometimes we'll do user stories. Different projects kind of beget different tools. I usually have a big flow chart that kind of here's basically how we're going to organize all of our functions. And then kind of when we're on the same page about that, then we will build out wireframes, which are black and white. We don't want to have any graphic design at that point because you don't want to be distracted by it. You want to just kind of focus on the user experience and the flow. So we'll do wireframes, which are just, you mock up all the screens in black, white, and gray. And then we prototype it so you can sort of feel, okay, press here, this happens, whatever. How does that feel? Is this organized the right way? Are we happy with it? And so we'll iterate a little bit on that. At any point throughout this process, you can bring in third-party feedback. You can use an online app to get a bunch of random people to look at your wireframes, or you can have a smaller cohort of people who are possibly already customers of yours to look at it and give you their thoughts on it. And then at that point, we move to full color. So we take these black and white screens and we make them beautiful, looking exactly like they're going to look like when it's developed. So we will bring in your existing branding at that point, or we can work with you on branding. But from the beginning to the end of that design process, at the end of it, you'll essentially have your whole app prototyped, click through online, it looks and feels real. You feel really clear about exactly what you want here. And then we annotate that so that it's development ready. So there's no missing pop-up or confusing flow. Make sure all the logic is in integrity. Oftentimes you'll have an app, a user-facing app. That's the fun part. And then you'll have an admin portal or something for you, a back-end CMS that you can edit the content of your app, or you can see your users, interact with your users, that sort of thing. So there's usually a desktop version, a desktop product, even if your app is mobile. So you'll do both of those things. Everybody's super clear about the scope of work. At that point, you'll bring a technical team on. They're going to interact with the designers and essentially find any missing pieces that the designer didn't think through. Well, what do we do when this happens? Or how do we calculate this number exactly? Because where's that data going to come from? That sort of thing. And then at that point, the technical team will create a giant line item estimate. They just break down the work to as small pieces as they can to try to get as precise as they can with the estimate. And then they'll do a minimum amount of hours, maximum amount of hours, expected amount of hours. It's kind of how we do it, sort of like a range for everything. And then that's how we understand how much the product is probably going to cost. And there's development time, but your team will be your developers, also your quality assurance specialist or specialists, and your project manager. So you'll have those three roles being played. On the development side, you'll have front-end developer and a back-end developer. If you have a mobile app and a desktop portal, which most people do, you'll have a front-end web developer and a front-end mobile developer. Front-end means they're developing the interface, the layer of technology that the person is interacting with. And then behind that is the back-end, which is where your server lies, the flow of data. There's like a brain and a face, kind of front end, back end. So that's what your team will be. So that everything will get estimated in terms of how much time we think it's going to take all of those members of the team. So here's how much it's going to cost. And if we started today and we had a full-time team, here's what the timeline would be. And that we usually Gantt chart that out. So who's going to be doing what when. And we use Gantt, which is like not a super user-friendly tool for a client, which is like not great about it, but we like to use it because it's very responsive. So like during your process, if something is ahead of schedule by 4 hours or behind schedule by 4 hours, we just kind of like make that change and the whole chart will update. So then we'll always kind of understand here's what life is going to look like moving forward. And also like have clear record of what it has looked like in the past. We use a project management tool. We use ClickUp. There's lots of other tools, Jira, Trello, etc. We like ClickUp just because it does like 1,000 cool things that we like to do. And then we use that for our, assigning tasks to developers, linking out all of our documentation all from that one place. So our clients always have access to that. We keep a lot of documents. So like we have planning documents while we're working. We document not only who's doing what, where. We look at how we're tracking toward the budget and the timeline. So we have like a special spreadsheet where we just do budget monitoring essentially, which is how many tasks we've completed, what percent of the project that is, and how many hours it costs and what percentage of our budget that was. So we always know like pretty good precision. We can answer, are we on time? Are we on budget at any point? Because those are really simple questions, but they're actually fairly complicated to get the right answer to. So especially during a long development process. And then I think you should expect to have regular meetings or at least get regular reports from your project manager. You should expect to be in easy communication with them. We use Slack, so all of our clients are there and we're always there. And so that's like kind of a lively space. It's like we're all in the same office in the cloud together a little bit. And then I think you also will want to have a UX person, strategy person who can help you iterate ongoing, who can help you think through a change that you might want to make and whether or not that's a good idea, how to best execute on that and that sort of thing. So somebody who can help you own the project, own the product. It's called a product owner. Is the role. Usually you would have either a dedicated person on your team who's the product owner, or you don't. If you're a smaller company, you might be the product owner. But you also have like 800 other things that you're going to do, and that's a full-time job. And so it's really helpful if there's someone independent of the project manager who can help you own the product. And essentially that means hold the vision and help you carry that through. We also have our QA will write up acceptance criteria. So that's like, or AC. So that's just a thing to understand is happening behind the surfaces is that before the developers can start a task, they need to know exactly what that task is and how will they know it's successful. So the QA will write up acceptance criteria. When all these things are true, then I accept it, it's good. So that all has to be written up ahead of time for the developers. And the QA will write like a hyper detailed version of it and then like a little bit less detailed version of it because it can be very overwhelming. And then give the client access to it so that they can review it and approve it. So we're all 100% sure all the way through the process that we have a mutual understanding of what we're trying to get done and what success looks like. And then ongoing, you want to be able to iterate. You want to be able to make changes, improvements. You shouldn't have a lot of bugs in your app. There might be changes that you want to make, but everything really should work as expected. And that's kind of would be like a red flag if you are going through your own, if your dev team hands over your product and saying, this is done. And you look at it and you're like, well, okay, here's a spreadsheet of notes on this product that are wrong about it. Like, sure, you might be like, I want to change the logo here. I want it to be a little bit smaller. I think we should add this or that. Like, sure. But if there's like a lot of issues at that point, I would consider that a red flag. Yeah. And also, I think another thing to note, there's the software development lifecycle, or the SDLC, which is something you can write down and know, can look very different. So the agile methodology is considered the best way to do things because essentially you're iterating all the time. So you build something, test it, improve it. You have this sort of like forward movement and then this loop, forward movement, loop, forward movement, loop. That is, you need to have a budget to be able to do that because it takes longer amount of time to be developing in that way. Before you kind of get to the point where you can be agile, you need to kind of build something to iterate on. So there's usually a phase in the beginning where it's essentially waterfall methodology, which is kind of considered a 4-letter word, but where you kind of define what you're going to build and then you build it. You just go and you get it done. That would be considered waterfall, whereas agile is much more loopy, right? And so it just depends on what your budget is, at what point do you want to launch, and then how you want to work. But if you're working agile, then you just want to be in a retainer sort of relationship with your developers or have them in-house so that they can essentially just respond and work with you in a more dynamic way.
That sounds like a really, really, really thorough process.
All right.
And I feel a lot of our listeners, when they listen to that, they might get scared. It sounds really thorough. So going through that process, what would it cost on average? I know it's like asking what's the length of a piece of string, but what's maybe ballpark figure? What would a business expect to spend on an app?
Oh, in terms of budget? Well, it really depends on who you work with. I don't recommend working with outsourced companies because it's just really risky. Just like there's big marketplace of like all the developers in the world and they all have their price per hour, and then like some people are dealers essentially. So these outsourced companies, it's just basically a dealer who's trying to make a profit, right? So they're finding like people who they don't have to pay, they have to pay them as little as possible and they can upcharge as much as possible. And they're always trying to find the right balance to, undercut the competition, but still make a lot of money. And so then you end up with just shit code, honestly, most of the time, often, right? I can't say most of the time. But they don't have the same priority that you have. Like their desire is to make money and they're dealing developers. It's helpful to work with an agency or someone who you feel is really a very experienced veteran level and who's willing to really partner with you on it all the way through the process, hold your hand, and who's going to help you make decisions that are going to be hard to make if you haven't been in this space. Just even in terms of UX, like, where should this pop-up be? Or should we ask for permissions here or there? That sort of thing. So it's helpful if you find an agency with whom you have some level of rapport and they can kind of carry you through. In terms of cost, I think it depends on the size of your project. So in that guide, I kind of have some like benchmarks there, but for Welcome, our projects are not less than about $75K. That's like the very lowest end. And then at the highest end, you'd be looking at an annual budget of $250,000 to $1 million, just kind of depending on the company, their station. So that's, at the high end, like a Umbrella, for example, would be at that high end, and Heavily Meditation app would be at that low end. So you kind of look at your complexity. But I often find like we're really I don't really know how we're priced in terms of like the broader universe because we just kind of sit and do what we do. And sometimes I was like in an RFP process where I realized I was like charging a lot less, for the same thing that other people are doing. And that's kind of like an existential moment, I think, for every business owner is like, what? Like, but I feel good about that. I feel good about where we are just because we're working with the clients we want to work with and are able to accommodate,
exactly,
companies that have like a 3 million raise, they can, or 1 million raise, they can still work with us. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's great. So I was going through the Welcome Studio Journal, and I saw some posts where you talked about software architecture and also AI. Everybody's talking about AI these days and how AI can help in creating high quality and cost efficient apps. So can you share a bit on that?
Sure. So I think the way that you might think about AI is like if you're using Google and it suggests what the rest of your sentence is going to be. Like when you're writing an email, I don't know if you have that option on or not, but AI can do that sort of thing for a programmer, can kind of help finish the sentence. I mean, like, look, I think it's called Code GPT, right? It's called something like that, that a developer can use, and it can help find things in the code. So it can help with kind of like refactoring, like if you're inheriting code, it can help to document code. It can help to enforce code styles so that you have code that's like more based in best practices, because it can kind of like enforce those best practices and kind of help you with speed and efficiency by, recommending things. Like what AI can't do is build a whole product for you. It can't come up with great solutions. It can't understand context. It kind of needs to be guided. Like, here's exactly what I want you to do and how I want you to do it. So it's not something that an amateur could wield with great results necessarily. It's just sort of like, a tool for a specialist to use to help them just increase their efficiency.
That's really great. So in your bio, you said you're a software architect. Can you just break that down for our guests too?
You can think about a software application similar to a house that you might build or a building. It needs to have on the ground level, just the basic architecture for how everything's going to kind of fit together, right? And then you would have builders who actually build it, right? And then you will have interior decorators who will put wallpaper on the walls. It'd be like a UI designer, right? But the architect is sort of like, there's a front-end architect and there's a back-end architecture. So, and you think about the face of the brain, right? So I'm working on this side, and I'm thinking about the user experience, essentially, like mapping out that experience, thinking about if this were a house, like efficient use of space and budget, and like what's the best experience going to be, and how are we going to set that up? And so I'm thinking about front-end architecture, whereas like a back-end architect is going to be more like plumbing and electricity, like things that you can't see, but that are essential to the whole system working, like critical to the whole system working. And so that person is going to think about how to execute on that in the best way.
That's great. That's really great. So is there anything you'd like to share with our guests? Guests thinking of building a mobile app, guests who have a mobile app and they're overwhelmed by it, or it's not working really well for them, or anything?
Anybody with an app, like, congratulations. I think it's just a huge accomplishment. It's a lot. There's so much that goes into it, I think, as we've discussed. And I personally think it's worth it. I mean, that's how I got into this space, is I just was so excited by the potential that, like, we've all got computers in our pockets, like, and anybody can build a little tool to put on that. And then you can build that tool and you can ship it globally immediately, which you can't do if you create like a pair of glasses and you want it to be available in the stores all around the world. Like, good luck. Like, it's going to take a really long time, right? But if you build an app, you can just ship it globally right now. And then when somebody has the tool, you can change it while it's still in their hands. You can evolve it. You can put new technology on it. You can make it more beautiful. You can, change the branding versus if you had a big, inventory of a product in a warehouse somewhere and you want to change your branding. There's just so many things about this industry as like a product class that I think I can't imagine anything more exciting. And now we have, we're talking about these with the new Apple headset, like developing applications that are essentially superimposed inside the room you're in, right? So we can build interfaces and tools that can like sit in someone's living room and they can like move it around. And like, if you can do that, Like, you can work with a team, you can design something you think is really cool, and it's just your vision. That's just what you want, and you can make it. I feel like there are barriers to entry in software that we've talked about. I want to help make those lower. Download the guide if that can be helpful to you. But like, it's so doable, and there are just so many cool things you can do and just keep doing once you're in it. So, yeah.
That's really good. I was listening to a podcast earlier. That was Women Leading the Way, where you talked about where you started your business with your own app. That was a business wellness application, if I'm right. So that shows you've had a lot of experience, both as a consumer.
Yes, I think that's I think maybe that sets Welcome apart, because I got started in the client's shoes. And I understood what it was like to work with an agency. And I really didn't like that process. I had a bad experience. And also hiring developers and like trying to manage them. Like, I built the agency I wished I'd had. And that's 100% how we run the business. And I keep myself in the client's shoes. So like, I have my own projects that I'm building, my own little app, and my team is building it. So I'm a customer of Welcome at the same time. And that helps me to kind of see like if there are any ways we can improve our processes, and what is it actually like to work with Anna as a project manager? Like, do I like the reports I'm getting? Are they answering the questions I have? And so I always do that. And also like just to have my skin in the game in the same way that my clients do. Cause like, once you launch your product, you have to market it, like there's many dimensions to this process. And so by keeping myself in the client's shoes, I feel aware of all of it, and I think have empathy for all of it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's really true. I think one of those apps should be the Who Farted app. I saw that on the App Store.
You can tell I have a 4-year-old son. Yeah, that app it's a nonprofit app for charity, and we're raising money for causes that support kids, and we're just trying to make kids laugh. So it's a really goofy one. We have like Emmy award-winning actors have contributed to that. It's been really exciting. Mandy Patinkin's in it, his wife, Catherine Grody, Rebecca Gayheart, who you may know from the 90s. She's amazing. Dan Bukatinsky, whose face you will recognize. And Beck Bennett is in the most recent World that we have not released yet. We'll release that with the iPad version, but he was big on SNL. He actually played Putin on SNL. I love that project. It's fun. It's like a lot of people contributed to make something that's just purely silly. And in the process, I got to, learn a lot about animation and just watch kids laugh.
All right. So thank you so much. So today we've talked about when businesses should build their app or choose a third-party solution. Like they always say, you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. We've also talked about examples of apps built by the Welcome Studio. She mentioned 4 apps: the meditation and yoga app, the Flow Living app, the Brilla app, and also the last one. Then we've also talked about today how the process, if your business wants an app, the process you're going to go through from discovery, from building the wireframe, down to delivering the app and then testing also. Then we've also talked about the average cost of building an app, and also applying AI in improving code quality and getting higher quality code today. So Lindsey, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Your Business show today and for sharing your insights and your experiences with us. So I'm sure our listeners have gained so much knowledge from this conversation with you today. So if listeners want to find out more about you or about the Welcome Studio, where can they go?
So our website is welcome.studio, which is WLCM.studio, no vowels. That's our website. I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. We're posting a series of articles on code quality right now. And Yeah, I think that's it. We're rebuilding our website, so it's going to be like brand new and beautiful starting in August. I'm pretty excited about that. It's just like so outdated, and you know how it goes. The cobbler has no shoes.
Yeah, true. That's very true. All right. So we'll link the Welcome Studio website, your personal website, as well as the guide to building software in the show notes below for listeners, so they can follow you, they can contact you, and they can build amazing apps with the Welcome Studio if they want to. So thank you everyone for tuning into the Tech Your Business podcast today. As always, we aim to bring you insights from industry experts and break down tech, make tech easy for your business. So today we've talked about teching your business with a mobile app, and next time we'll talk about something different. So thank you all again for tuning into the show today, and see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Peter. That was fun.